think you have to be obsessed with things to get to the top 1%. I don't think you have to be obsessed to be good, but I think you have to be obsessed to be great. And when you start to look at people, whether it's Mr. Beast, those who have risen to the top of writing, they're obsessed with their craft. I think that most people don't really see that they can be top 1% at something. And to me, you carry the secret around with you. Things that you know when you're walking out in the world, things that you routinely see. No one can beat a person who never gives up. And you just have to believe in yourself that if you just keep doing it, you'll figure it out.
When people dream big, two paths come up over and over again. They want to be a pilot or a writer, but how many actually make it to the top 1%? The truth, most writers never get close. But what if you could? What if there was a way to think, act, and perform like the very best? Dr. Julie Gurner is here to show us how. She's an executive performance coach, a doctor of psychology, and was called the real-life Wendy Rhodes from Billions by the Wall Street Journal. An hour of her time costs thousands of dollars, but today you get to learn from her for free. She writes the ultra-successful newsletter on Substack and works with people in the most competitive industries on earth. In this episode, we unpack the mindset, the habits of the top 1% of writers, and what they do differently to rise to the top and stay there. How to become the 1% writers, how to join the ranks of the 1% writers in the world. I studied, for instance, what Dan Coe is saying, what Tim Denning, for instance, are saying. And for instance, Dan Coe is saying, if you want to belong to the top 1%, then you have to let go of fear, following curiosity, test your interests with action, committing long enough to see what sticks. Tim, for instance, he's saying, writing success comes from small, repeatable actions done daily and compounded over time. So when you hear this, Julie, these two perspectives, let's say this bold mindset versus this daily discipline, what is your take and where should writers focus if they want to break into the top 1%?
I think that you have to understand both, kind of who you speak to and who you speak for. And so to me, rather than looking external at all of those actions, which I think are all very important, I think it really starts with the self and understanding what you have to share with the world. Like, what do you really have to say? And keeping that. One of the mistakes that I often see is that people go too broad, right? So they never get known for anything. So you have to kind of have like, what do you speak about and who do you speak for? And for me, you'll notice if you look at my notes, if you look at my Substack itself, if you look at me on X or if you look at me on LinkedIn, I am always talking about the same thing. So that if someone says, who is the person that is about executive performance or, high performance mindset, my hope is that Dr. Gurner comes to mind. And it is because that is what I talk about. That is what I talk about all the time in a variety of ways. And so people know, hey, if I want to learn information about high performance mindset, I'm going to, follow, talk to, subscribe to Dr. Gurner. And that's where I'm going to find that information. And so, but sometimes if we spread ourselves too thin, where we're saying, look, I'm really into fitness and I have a variety of interests too, right? So I'm not just interested in high performance, but if I talked about all of the variety of the interests that I have, I never get known for that one thing. And so I really hope that people that can kind of focus in on that one thing that they are really passionate about, that they can cultivate an audience around. It tells you who you speak to and who you speak for. And it makes it very clear then, who are you writing to? Who are you speaking for? And everything else becomes far more clear. So to me, it's really about internal focus first and knowing, kind of what the one thing is that you can really bring to the world and honestly provide value to other people.
So this is awesome that we should rather like hyper focus on one specific thing. It's better to be known for one thing than for like 10 things and we're somehow like not being seen in this world.
Think about all the creators that you know and how many of them do you know for more than one thing? Like if you think about, Dan Coe, what do you know him for? You don't know him for 10 things. So, even right now we're sitting at my farm and I haven't talked about my chickens very often, even though I do love them. I have a sheep. I don't talk about her very often either, but there are a lot of things that, I love old structures and old architecture and old farmhouses. You can see the background, but I talk about high performance because to me, it is the reason why I'm able to have this or to get there. And, I want my audience to kind of whatever their dreams are to be able to get where they want to go.
So what do you think can writers learn from the high performers you coach in tech and finance, as you already mentioned?
I think you have to be obsessed with things to get to the top 1%. I don't think you have to be obsessed to be good, but I think you have to be obsessed to be great. And when you start to look at people, whether it's Mr. Beast or it is those who have risen to the top of writing, they are, they're obsessed with their craft. They love what they do. They love who they speak to and for. They love kind of the vision that they have and what they bring to the world. Stephen King, loves what he does. There are, you could look at all of the different writers of very different flavors and styles, and they all love. I've just read a book by Annie Jacobson around nuclear war, and she goes through every single hour of what it would be like after a nuclear attack. And someone who has done such, incredible detail and granular detail on how she laid that out. And I think, wow, this is a woman who's interviewed 1 million people, has an obsession around this particular topic. And the fact that she had that obsession is what makes that book phenomenal. It's what made it so wonderful to so many people. And I think that's true for Substack. I think it's true for the smaller things that we write, the larger things that we write. But I think that the blessing of Substack and the gift of it over other platforms is that, you get to have a relationship with your readers. And I think that a lot of writers overlook that. And I think a lot of large writers even overlook that. But to me personally, I think that is one of the most rewarding, engaging things, because you can write a book and send it into the world and you hope that you get some great feedback around it. Maybe the New York Times will write about it. But on Substack, you write a great article, you get comments, you get people who talk to you, you can speak back to them, they ask questions. I love that stuff. And to me, I think that is not only how you, the rewards that you get personally as a writer, but also it helps to, and especially in a world of AI, it helps to really increase your capacity to reach other people, because people know you're a real human. You care about them genuinely. And I can tell you that when I've had courses or other things and I see people from my Substack in that, I'm always thrilled to see them, because now I get to put a face with a name. I get to interact with them personally. So there are kind of such rewards there, but I think interaction is incredibly important as well.
What I see in the Online Writing Club often now is people 50 plus. This is really a social movement on the platform, I think. So many people finding their true voice now, connecting with others. I love this community aspect and this relational aspect also you have on platforms like Substack or also Medium. So it's not bad, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
this interest media, it has so many awesome opportunities for us. And talking about opportunities, you already touched on community, relationship building and all this stuff. What do you think are like the biggest mindset traps you see that keeps people from rising into the top 1%?
I think that most people don't really see that they can be top 1% at something. And to me, you carry the secret around with you, things that you know when you're walking out in the world, things that you routinely see. And there is something about almost everyone that I've worked with. Now, a lot of the people I work with are, particularly focused in business, right? So whether it's business or making money or wealth creation or what have you, but everyone can be top 1% at something. And maybe there is someone out there who is phenomenal at sales, phenomenal at communications, phenomenal at building friendships. Like if you are somebody who makes friends easily, you may not know it out there, but that is an incredible skill. And that's a skill that a lot of people don't have. Could you write something about human connection, how to make friends easily? If you're great at dating, if you're great at having first dates, if you're somebody who understands how to navigate even, like relationships or maybe aging parents, or there are a number of things. But I think that we discount the 1% talents that we carry around with us every day, and also discount the fact that that talent could help so many other people. And if you can do that and you can share that, there's always an audience for that. I think we overlook it because it comes easy to us. We always overlook the easy stuff, but that's the stuff that people would love to learn and learn more about. So that's what I would say about, but I think the fear, what you're talking about is like, why don't they bring it forward? I think they don't bring it forward because one, they don't see that that's what they carry because it's easy and natural for them. But I think secondly is because putting it out there in the world is risky. There's a lot of risk. And people are not always so nice. So I always think, there's a risk reward benefit. And I ask people to ask themselves, what is the worst thing that could happen if you try? What is the worst? The worst is probably someone's going to be a jerk and say something smart aleck and say something that, is going to be icky. But like, if that's the worst, can you manage that? Is it worth it to have a platform and to have an ability to write and to express yourself? Absolutely. One jerk is worth it. 10 jerks is worth it, because there also will be thousands of other people, even if they don't interact with you, that will see that message and probably one or two take action on it, and it makes their life or day better. And I think that that is worth it in the end. But question yourself. Don't allow yourself to be held back by that one jerk that exists in the world.
I want to celebrate 1 year of my podcast with you. Here's how you can join the celebration. Check the show notes for a special surprise to celebrate 1 year of the podcast. I know that on your Substack, you've written about the power of Audacity, for instance. What does Audacity look like for a writer? What do you think?
I think Audacity for a writer looks like saying the things that you truly want to say. I think that sometimes in writing, we couch our messages in ways that we think will be palatable or that will be received well. We are too tender with our words. And I think that sometimes when we are a little unvarnished and a little more straightforward, it's when people really can ingest the impact of what you have to say. Because I think sometimes when you are to be audacious as a writer, to say the real words that you want to say in the way you want to say it. If you don't do that, you not only dilute your impact, you dilute the power of what you bring to the table, and it reduces your message in the world. I think a lot of times why people like to read some of the things that I say, to be candid, is that I don't couch them in ways that are tender. I say it straightforward, but people know it still comes from a place of care. So it is this kind of delicate balance. But I do think that being audacious as a writer is actually saying what you want to say. And too many people try to be too nice and hold back. And I don't mean to be a jerk, because that's a very much the opposite of that. But what I do mean is to be actually authentic and not to kind of shape that in a way that changes who you are in the world.
When we come back to this point where you said we don't see how awesome we are, I think it's very important also with our 9 to 5s that wherever we are, it doesn't have to mean that you have to quit your 9 to 5 to find your voice or your identity. It's more about finding in what you are already doing. For instance, for me, I started writing about parenting when I gave birth. And I thought, I don't want to do anything that has to do with marketing, public relations, online marketing, and so on. And then at some point, I saw, apparently people loved what I was writing about the creator economy and adding my 2 cents to how Medium is evolving, all this stuff. Now with Substack, I'm doing this, And so somehow this also helped me to love what I studied and what I'm doing in my 9 to 5.
You were able to see the beauty of your expertise and how well received it actually is and how much you actually have. And because of that, your Substack has grown, tremendously. And your ability to reach out to people, your ability to connect with people. When you talk about Audacity, you reached out to me, no problem. And I think that, some people would be afraid to do that. And you've reached out to a lot of other writers. No fear, reach out, because what's the worst that could happen? Someone says no. Okay. So you move along. And, you're sitting there in Germany. I love the fact that we have a global audience. My Substack is in, I think it was like 183 different countries. It's just the reach that we have and the ability we have to connect with other people. And your perspective, I think, is the right one. I don't think anybody should just quit and go all in. You test things out. And, at some point, your Substack may take on a life of its own where you're like, I just don't want the safety net of my current job. But you get to make that choice, and you can do it as gradually as you want, or you could never do it. And I think that there is room and space for everyone along the continuum there. But I love the fact, you really embody Audacity in many ways that you ask about. And I think it's just fantastic we can have these conversations.
So what do you think about mental habits? Which habit should writers start practicing immediately?
I think clarity is one that is very rare and very important. So knowing where you're going, there's a great saying that you can't hit a target if you don't know where it is. So you want to be sure that you have clarity around what your own goals are for what you do. And so for some people, I think that those goals don't have to be massive. Like, this month I want to get 10 new subscribers. I want to contact, and what does that mean? Like, let's reverse engineer it. Let's say, hey, I want to make sure that on notes when I post, that I'm on notes and I'm responding kindly and excited about other people's notes. And I'm because I will tell you that even for my notes, and when people are commenting and they seem to be on, the same vibe and the same page as that I am, I follow them immediately. I want to hear what they have to say. I want to learn more about them. And people will do the same for you. So I do think that one of the ways to be a great person on Substack and to get a lot of people on Substack is to be a giver. And in that, you talked about Gary Vee. And I'm very much a fan of his, like, you jab, 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 right hook philosophy, where you just give and give and give and give. And then when you do have an ask, people are excited about helping you. You're excited to help other people who've given to you. So I do think that there's this community that you can build in that way. But having clarity and making sure that you're clear on what your own goals are helps you to direct every other action behind it. To get to that extra, to those 10 subscribers, what do you need to do? To get to that 100 subscribers, what do you need to do? If you're thinking about having a paid Substack, a lot of people shy away from having paywalls or getting paid for their work. And, I see that on Substack notes often, like, oh, I'll never use a paywall. I'll never get paid for my work. And it makes me sad. There are things that you give away, and I certainly have a free edition too. But if you put in time, I will spend hours writing this Substack. I'll spend hours working with, I have an editor who can create graphics for me, and, I'll spend time with that. And I think that to say that that's not valuable is something that you shouldn't cut yourself off from. You want to provide value for people, but also, make sure that you are rewarded for the good work that you do. And there's nothing kind of inherently wrong with that. But if you do strive to have a paid Substack, if you strive to make your income in this way, have clarity on your goals, and then reverse engineer everything behind it.
I know it's pretty generic, similar to or superficial, similar to value, add value, be consistent. However, number one on Substack, I see, and on other platforms as well, is consistency. People struggle with consistency. On Substack, I think after edition 14 to 16, most quit. Today, I was talking with a podcast influencer. He told me that also, like, let's say 70% of all podcasts are inactive. That's why for instance, I belong to the top 5% already with my podcast. I'm like, wow, okay.
Wow.
And it's pretty
That's
easy
amazing.
also to join the top 50%. You just have to have like 100 or 200 downloads or so in the first 7 days. How do you think can writers build discipline at a high level every day, even when motivation is low?
I think you first have to understand yourself and what are the ways in which you can be consistent. So for me, I could not write every day, and that's okay. I can put out a Substack 2 or 3 times a week. That is going to be my limit. I know myself enough to know that I couldn't be that person. So if you're that person and you say, look, you're excited about it, but you are someone who probably can write well, like has to write a couple of times a week, or that, you can write throughout the week, but you think you could only put something really of quality together a couple of times a week, then do that. I don't think that you should feel pressure around having a certain cadence where it has to be daily, or it has to be this, or it has to be that. You can do it your own way. As you know, research that shows that you should be doing 2 to 3 times a week to be able to maintain an audience and do some of those things around, your metrics. But as far as putting something out every day and the caliber that is and how you think about it, I think you have to know yourself, and with your own writing habits to know yourself. So for example, for me, sometimes I will write what comes out on Monday. We always keep, a schedule of a few articles in advance so that I'm always working on it. But, I have a schedule where sometimes I'll write on the weekend if I get a great idea. Sometimes I'll write on a Monday if I have some time and I have some good ideas. But I can't be the person who gets up and says, you know what, from 2 to 4, I'm going to write every day. That is true for many authors. They can do that, and I am in awe of it, but that is not me. So kind of knowing who you are and not trying to be anyone else, and then kind of how you organize your Substack around that is really important.
You also touched already on AI, for instance. Do you use AI then to help you, like as a co-pilot or something with your writing and with organizing your stuff?
I get as excited about AI as anyone else. But what I realize is that I've tried to do some things with AI, and then I realized that the content sucked. I mean, it did not feel like me. It didn't look like me. The ideas weren't great. And then I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I will use AI to think about how I would structure a graphic, which is weird. So what I'll do is I'll say, okay, this is the concept that I'm really excited about. How would you represent that in a graphic? And then it gives me a few ideas around the graphics. And then the editor I work with who will look at that, and then she gets very creative in Canva and doing all these other things and can make things look beautiful. AI to me is just, it reduces the humanness of what you do. And it also, because it pulls from the internet, any unique ideas you have, it excludes. So I realized, because my Substack is really taking learnings from my clients who are in the top 1% and kind of distilling that for other people, that the reason people subscribe to me is because you have these unique insights. And so I realized that AI, when I've attempted, excludes all of those things. Like, there was a recent article that I put out called, it's very different from what I usually write, called How to Not Get Divorced, really, as an Ambitious Person. And all of the things that I've put there, you would never find on the internet. You wouldn't find it in AI. The only thing that's in there are the census statistics, which, around divorce, or, the typical reasons for divorce. But all the other things aren't there. And I thought, this is what makes great content, and this is what makes it unique. And this is why people pay or subscribe, is because you're going to give them something they can't find anywhere else. And that's what you should really strive to do, that makes you stand out. If people just want to do AI, I think they should be straight. It's probably great for things like, here are the top headlines of the day, or here are the things that people are talking about on the internet. And to be honest, that's not always unique value. But I think if you want unique value, you have to put out unique product. And to do that, it requires some effort. It's going to require more effort. And so while I'm not opposed to people using AI for various things, I haven't found it useful in writing. I wish it was, honestly, but it is not.
Share this episode with a friend who's been thinking about starting a podcast, and help me celebrate 1 year of this journey. Thank you so much. And Julie, you are on Substack and you are on Instagram. And is there any other platform you would say is
I think I'm biggest on X, honestly, on Twitter.
on X? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I have like 148,000 followers there. And, it's really, I have a very engaged audience. I've been there for over a decade. And it's probably the place that I'm largest. Substack is something that, I have a consulting practice. And so, people have always asked questions about the people that I work with. And so this is a way of distilling the learnings from those people and being able to kind of bring them to anyone who cares to read about it. How to get promoted. How do people think about that, who are in the seat of the CEO, and what they look for? How can you be better at the things that you do? How can you not hold yourself back? And I look at it from a psychological and personal perspective. So it isn't just tactical things. It's, looking at yourself and examining yourself and pushing yourself. And if you really want to get somewhere, I opened this talking about, who do you speak for? I'm someone who, their mom cleaned houses for a living. And now I work with the top 1% in business, globally. And I have clients in India and Singapore and the UK and the US, and people who are top in tech and in a variety of, industrial industries. If I can kind of help and speak for people who come from nothing and want to get somewhere, my mission is really to believe that greatness can come from anywhere, and to help people get where they want to go. And so I'm very clear about who I speak to and for. And I really hope that people, in wherever station in life they're in, truly believe in themselves. And it's true for being a great writer, a great marketer, a great person in business. And that's really the core of what I dig into.
So this means that you're focusing then on X, or let's say you started on X, then you got on Substack, as so many recommend, and now you have like this connection there between X and Substack, which is working well, I think. And somehow you also managed then to convert followers from X, I guess, then to subscribers on Substack, and now you are having thousands of paid subscribers. What do you think? What do you think were your like small habits that helped you become this public figure you are now? Do you think that, and also do you think that interest media really helped you with this? Because I guess with X, you somehow also became more present and more seen.
I think there are a lot of people on X who have large audiences, but not all audiences are engaged audiences. And so that's where I think that, a lot of people engage in what they see as like broadcasting. And I think once you get to a certain point, you can. If you're Martha Stewart and you just want to, throw things out into the wind, no one expects Martha Stewart is going to interact with them. And it probably doesn't matter. And they will buy anything that she does, no matter where she goes. Lovely for her. For the rest of us individuals, I think that the key to, bringing your audience forward, and my key has always been to engage. Engagement. If you look at tweets that I did 10 years ago, you will see that I'm still answering, talking to other people, and I do it today. And thoughtfully, not just like, Great job. Like we actually have conversations. And what does that require though? It requires hours of your time. It requires your investment. And so people sometimes will throw a tweet or throw a Substack note out there and go, well, see, that failed. Well, did it fail or were you engaged? Did you go out there and engage with other people? Because oftentimes they'll come and check out your things. What are you doing to make the end result that you want happen? And so to me, the habits that you have are, that you are ultimately responsible for the outcomes that you get. And I've said many times that as long as you have at least an average IQ and you have good health, there is nothing that you should limit yourself from doing. And I firmly believe that there's always a way, but people will give up too quickly, as you've said about podcasts and as you've said about Substack. I couldn't believe people give up after 14, huh? That astonishes me because I was on Twitter, for example, for 10 years before I actually became big. Gary Vee is making videos about wine and jelly beans for years and to no one. And so you have to be willing to suck to get better. And you see what works and what doesn't, and that's okay. Like you have to be okay with it. I was on one thing I do want to put out there just to let people know how badly I've failed is that I used to do an hour on Twitch free, absolutely free. I had coached a gaming team who was globally competitive. And I thought, oh, this would be really cool. People who are gamers might be interested in mental performance and how you get past losses because it's so fast paced. And I had all these great techniques. And you know what? I said, I'm going to commit to doing it every Friday. Like I had, at first no one showed up and then maybe 5 people showed up. And I think at my max, maybe 10 or 20 people showed up. Now, an hour of my time now, like I charge anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 a month to like work with me right now. That hour is so valuable, if I were to bill it. However, no one showed up to it, wrong platform. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. I totally bombed. Totally bombed. I was out there free, wrong audience, wrong message. That's okay. And I think that, maybe X is not going to be your space. Maybe, the message that you're giving isn't the right one, but be willing to adapt and change.
And I know that in Master the Dial, you talk about expressing emotions with precision. How can writers use this skill to connect more deeply with their audience?
That's great. And thank you for referencing that. Yeah. And mastering the dial, like everyone has a range of emotional expression and, like where you are in that, on that notch is really important. And so I think connecting with other people, my rule, if you look on Substack in notes, for example, is that, you are going to have people who are really excited. You have people who will critique you, which I'm open to, honestly. And then you will have people who are pretty toxic. And so the toxic folks, I just delete. Substack has a function to delete them. Easy to do. So I encourage everyone to do that because then there's no, benefit to that, to that person. But if people disagree, engage, and engage in a way that like you feel you can do so with a sound mind and, kind of a rational head. And so sometimes if you see something that is kind of irritating to you, walk around for an hour, do something else, come back to it. You'll have a better response. And I think that, as you are, kind of out there in the world, your dial and kind of mastering that dial is so important, even in how you connect to other people. I know that, for example, you and my assistant went back and forth a bit and like, but even in those interactions, he has such a positive thing to say about you, and so, clearly you're good at mastering your dial, right? Like you're good with your emotional, back and forth. And, he understands that every person that comes in contact with my organization is to be treated well and to be treated like they are the most important person in the world. It's one of our kind of ethics that we have in our organization. And so I think that, not only do you master your own dial, but in your ecosystem, if you have a team, if you're building a team, making sure that your ethic is kind of bleeds through to others who work in that organization. So that everybody is rowing the boat in the same direction and people have an experience, even if it's not with you, they have a great experience with everything that you touch and that is represented. It's really important to me. And certainly it seems like it's very important to you. I know that we had, like I said, challenges in scheduling, but you know what? At the end of the day, everyone was happy. And that's a testimony in and of itself, because sometimes scheduling is frustrating.
What are your core values in your business? Because I think this is so important.
Our core values are integrity. We are to act integrous both with anyone outside of ourselves and with each other. We are white glove service, which means that we treat everybody, as if they are an important person, as if they are even in a 5-star hotel. They are the most important person in our area. We are hungry, meaning that we are looking for opportunity, and we continue to have internal drive and strive. We educate ourselves. We always strive to present things that are, continue to up-level ourselves in our work, whether that's me or it's my assistant, or it is the person who works and does, graphics and editing. We also strive to always produce. Excellence is one of our values also. So we want the content that we produce to not just be average, we want it to be better. And so sometimes when we talk about, so those are kind of some of the core values that we have. But then when I talk with my team, we talk about the things like, hey, did this meet our standard of excellence? Is this something, are we being, are we hungry enough? It gives us language to talk with each other and to talk about our own performance. And it's how we rate ourselves. It's how we rate each other. It's how we think about those outside of us. And it gives us a framework to operate that is incredibly important to me. And we have a mission statement, right? That we believe that greatness comes from anywhere. And we believe that it's part of our job and mission to help that kind of come to fruition. We have a lot of uniting variables on the team, and I hope that everyone does. It's an important thing.
Have you ever met someone from Substack? Have they invited you?
I haven't met anyone from Substack. I think you were the first person I'm meeting from Substack. I've met some readers from Substack in, like I said, a course or something that I've done, but I have not had conversations one-on-one with folks from Substack.
Yeah, but I'm not an employee. I mean, from the employees from Substack?
I have talked to someone from Substack for
relationships, I guess, then.
Maybe for relationships. I don't know that I have. There's a lot of things that I do differently than other top sellers. For example, I've never run an ad. Everything's organic. So I've never had, you see a lot of people who run ads to kind of drive Substack subscriptions. All of my readers are completely organic, at least thus far. Maybe I'll run things in the future. I can't rule that out. But a lot of people, I have grown this to a certain point. We're going to start maybe doing some sponsorships. That might be really nice, depending on if it aligns. But there are a lot of places to go from here. And Substack gives you a lot of opportunities to do a variety of things and engage in a variety of ways. So I'm really hoping that I can continue to build on the platform, continue to have great relationships like yourself. And I hope that resources like yours can continue to give people insights and information so that they can be successful on this platform, because they're hearing from real people. And I think that's different than just reading tips like in an article, is that you get real people who give you real advice.
Yeah, that's exactly what you said with this generic stuff you get from AI. You could also prompt AI and say, hey, tell me something about whatever, how to grow on Substack or so. But it's much better to bring you a 86-year-old Patricia Ross from the Bay Area who's rocking it. And we've known already since 2021. And she was always afraid. And Christina, social media. Then she started on Medium, and it's amazing. And now she's on Substack. And in the beginning of the year, she started, and I said to her, hey, why not share a video? Because I love her. She's a psychotherapist. And then she was like, oh, I don't know. And then she started with video. She started, I don't know, with 80 views or so, or 80 likes, and then 400, 800. And now she had one viral post with 86 years old, more than 20,000 likes. I don't know how many restacks, so cool.
Amazing.
And this, for her, of course, it's not about, but she feels seen. And in this case, it's really she feels seen with her story, how everything began with her marriage when she was 46, this late bloomer, that you can also reach your goals later in life. So almost cry here if I'm talking about Patricia. Yeah.
But I also think that these personal things that you're talking about and that I'm talking about are a hedge against AI. I know that people have said to me, hey, of course you get very doomer people, and they'll say, AI is going to take over X, Y, and Z. And you know what? I think that AI takes over people who are not people. If you're just getting generic robotic advice or generic robotic things, that's where AI is going to take. But if you have a relationship with someone, you are connected, and they're a real person offering real experience and real advice, real insights, AI can't match that. And so I do think that, there is an opportunity to establish yourself and get people to know you that actually helps you win in the future world of writing.
However, you notice, Julie, there are some, also Denko, for instance, they say we only have like 300 days left or so before AI is going to take over. I hope also that the future is going to be different. But again, I think that you really can game this. You can game this. You can say, hey, all of this, all these signs that I use AI, please, don't use this.
I take a very different approach. I hope everyone uses AI so that I stand out. I hope everyone does it. It makes me look better. If other people want to go in that direction, I think what it does is it starts to make everyone look the same. And the thing is, sameness blends in. Outliers are not the same as everyone else. And that's a feature, right? So if you want to be an outlier, you have to think very carefully about how you will not be the same as everyone else. And that's why sometimes you get these people who do, unfortunately, the algorithm really, people say really outlandish things, sometimes not in a very positive direction. It also promotes that kind of content because it is also an outlier. But we want to be an outlier in the best of ways. And that means not being the same. And so if you're producing the same kind of AI stuff that everyone else is, I mean, not to say that AI doesn't have its place, or maybe even there's a really tough paragraph for you to figure out and you want to try to work with it. I think it can be a great thought partner. But as far as, the entirety, you want to think about who you are and bringing that to the table and knowing that it's valuable. My concern is that once you rely too much on something like a calculator, why would you do your own calculations? Right. And so the same is true for writing. I've heard a lot of people say, I've used AI to write all my emails. It takes me forever now to write my emails. And I'm like, oh no, you still want to make sure that you're able to connect. It's why I've hired a human assistant. Can I have AI do all of those things that an assistant could do? Probably at this point. But, I think it's great to have a human touch. And when people call and they're frustrated about something on a customer service, everyone hates having, a chat bot. Like, it is the most frustrating thing. You just type the same thing over and over again, and you just want it to end or to get to a person. So I figure I'm going to skip that step and give them a person immediately, and people can deal with an individual who is happy to help them, great, happy to engage with them, a pleasure to work with. If all the world is more like that, I think we're in a better place.
And what do you think? How can writers manage their fear of criticism, and how can they not letting their fear shut down their creative voice? Because there are too many out there who could share their wonderful stories. They're native speakers who can talk, you know what I mean, like for hours without like overthinking everything. So,
I think that when you look at criticism, fear of criticism, I really hope that people don't let it sit there, because I think if it stops there, what I mean by that is that ask yourself more specific questions. What am I actually afraid of with the criticism? Sometimes people are afraid of ridicule or being ridiculed by others or being ridiculed in public. And then you start asking yourself, well, if that happened, could I manage it? And then you start to also ask yourself, well, is that fear or that concern worth not doing the thing I want to do? Like, is it really worth it to not have, if you love to write, and let's just say you love it, and you want to put a Substack out there, put something together, and you allow your fear that Shelley or Ted is going to say something mean about you, and Shelley and Ted now determine your future. You're going to let Shelley and Ted determine your future trajectory. Do they have that much power? Are you going to give them that much power? Or are you going to just run over Shelley and Ted and say, you know what? No matter what someone says, I'm going to just do my thing. And if they criticize me, that's okay. I can't tell you how many people have criticized me on the way up. And the funny thing is, people criticize you early. They criticize you when they think you're vulnerable. And then once you get to a certain point, you get very little criticism. At this point in my career, it's odd as it is to say, I get very little criticism. I got so much more early on when people are like, what is it that you do exactly? What is it that, like all of this kind of thing that people would be very skeptical and say disparaging things and, comment on all these other things. Because when you're first breaking out is when you're most of a threat to other people. You're the highest point of threat because you're choosing to take a bet on yourself. You're choosing to say, I'm different. And you're choosing to put yourself out there. And that is a threat to people who could never think about doing that thing themselves. And the people who will criticize you are people who have taken no risk, who are, I mean, you won't find me criticizing someone who's trying out there to take a risk. In fact, I recently like restacked a Substack that I thought was really cool, has very few followers, and I think she's doing an amazing job. You know, people who are criticizing you are people who couldn't take those risks themselves. They are cowardly and fearful, and they're looking for a place to feel important. So, you know, take that risk. Don't let Ted or Shelley or whomever it is out there hold you back. Really ask yourself, is that worth it? Are they worth trading that future for? Because I would bet that they're not. And so you just keep pushing and pushing, and eventually you get to a point where very few people criticize you anymore. And if they do, they're drowned out by 20,000 other people who think you're great and appreciate the work that you do. You just got to get there. So if you can hang in there, it's just a resilience game. That's all it is, resilience game. And that's the game you play for a very long time.
As I told you, I analyzed some of your most viral notes, and I'd love for you to elaborate on them for the writer. So one of them was here: whenever you feel you are too late, try this very cool perspective shift. I'm 37. Instead of regretting that I can't wake up age 18 again, I pretend to myself that I'm 90 and I've woken up age 37 again, and that I get to magically, wonderfully have the next 50 years again. Why do you think this perspective resonates so deeply?
Because I feel like it reminds people that today is a day that you can start no matter where you're at. We're a very youth obsessed culture. And what's interesting about it is that it is statistically wrong. You know, people are most likely, even in business, to start their most successful companies in their 40s. In their 40s. You know, but we hear about those in their 20s and they have these $1 million, multi-million-dollar exits. The reason people don't know that we hear about this is because they are outliers. They are not common statistically. The common statistical winners are in business, are starting businesses in their 40s. And then we have people in their 50s who start businesses and 60s and are still doing incredibly well. So I think the message resonates because it is a reminder that, you know, just because you have a certain number behind your name doesn't mean the opportunity isn't there and you can't do it. And I'm cheering for those folks. And I think everyone likes to hear a little shot in the arm that people want them to win. And, I've always said that no one can really compete with me because I want them to win too. So it would be very hard to put me down.
Another one is: don't fall into the trap of mourning a life you can still live. What does this mean for someone who feels stuck?
I think that when things are hard for you, it is easy to just look at the hard and you say, well, this is the way life is always going to be. And we forget that we have choice, right? Like you can still do these things on the other side. Things you may have taken a couple hits, you may take a couple knocks, but if you let your story stop when it's hard, you never get to the good stuff. Like if I stopped after my Twitch experience where no one showed up, then that's where my story ends, right? And because I kept going and because I made that choice, I get to sit here and everybody can do that. It's nothing special about me. Again, it's a resilience game. And so I say, you don't have to mourn a life you can still live. Like, yeah, put that stuff behind you, continue onward, make a different choice, keep going. And no one can beat a person who never gives up. And you just have to believe in yourself that if you just keep doing it, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. Everybody does. And you will too. Most people just give up.
Do one more note here. You said the faster that you do the hard things you want to avoid, the faster you will receive the good things you actually want. Why do you think is this principle so hard to live by for so many?
I think it's because honestly, and it's going to show my age, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think it is because we have platforms like Instagram that only show the rewards of success and not what it took to get there. Like we show people who have like everyone posts pictures of their lovely house or their car or their family or, even like, your family. Like you didn't post about all the stories of terrible dates you went on to meet the wonderful person you did. You don't post about, maybe tragedies that happened before you had these lovely children. You don't post about any of the hard. The hard is absent from our vision. I think it resonates because we have to go through the hard to get to the great stuff. It's just we never see it. And so we feel like we can just skip over that. So people lose patience for it. And you can't skip over it. The only way is through. That is the only way. If you want to have a great relationship or even a great marriage, you have to date people, and some of those people are going to be terrible. That's the way it is. But that's the way it is in business too. That's the way it is on Substack. You're going to write stuff. Some of it's going to be terrible. That's okay. I write terrible stuff too sometimes. Like we all have that happen. And so I think if we can get to the other side of it and not just buy the Instagram version of everything in life, then we can kind of really get the rewards that truly you can get to if you do the hard things.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I'm so thankful. And it was really delightful talking to you, Julie, today.
Lovely to speak to you. I hope that people check out Ultra Successful on Substack and connect with me there on Notes. I'd love to kind of connect with you and learn more about who you are.
I want to celebrate 1 year of my podcast with you. Here's how you can join the celebration. Check the show notes for a special surprise to celebrate 1 year of the podcast.